So what is a religion anyway? How do we know what a religion is? How do we know what is a sincerely held belief and what is not? I had this quote, religion, that's not a religion, because of a case that I had in which an employee of one of my clients asked for time off based on their particular religious orientation. And this organization was way outside of the mainstream. It involved the meditation. It was based on ancient Indian thought processes and techniques. So when this person asked for time off to go meditate on the basis of his religious beliefs, the employer said, religion, that's not even a religion. That's not what I think of as a religion. So what is a religion? Well, originally Title VII did not define religion, just as it doesn't define race or color or sex or national origin. In large part because the drafters kind of thought they knew what religion was. It was being a Methodist or a Baptist or a Catholic or a Jew. It did not define religion because in many ways we didn't think we needed to define what religion is. But in 1972, the Congress amended the statute to say that religion is defined as all aspects of religious observance and practice, as well as belief. Now, there's two things you should note about this definition. The first is that it's a tautology in that it defines religion as religious observance and practice. So it essentially uses the word to define itself. But more than that is, we know from this definition that religion is more than simply your beliefs, but it is your practices. It is not simply what you believe, what you think, but it is also what you do. So the statute in 72 was amended to say that religion is about more than simply who you are. It's about what it is that you do. Now, this definition is not very helpful, again, because it's a tautology. We're using a word to define itself. So courts have developed a test, and religious status is now based on two considerations, which is to say, first of all, is the belief closely held? Is it a sincerely held belief system? Is it that you truly believe in this as a religion, or is it that you have converted to become a partitarian because you want to, your religion demands you have Friday and Saturday night off? So is the belief closely held? Is it sincere? And secondly, does the belief take the place of religion in an employee's life? Is the belief, whatever it is it serving in a similar role as religion? So in the case of my client and his employee who followed this Indian teacher and was required to meditate for an hour every day, in that case, although it's not a religion that we would expect or that we look at or that was contemplated at the time of Title VII, nevertheless, it takes the place of religion in an employee's life. In fact, being an atheist can be considered a religion for religious discrimination purposes, because your atheism takes the place of religion in your life. Now, it need not be belief in a deity as we know it, God, or the common thoughts. And in fact, the employer cannot question the sincerity of the belief simply because it appears to be unorthodox. The employer must accept the sincerity of its employee. Not enough that it be simply unorthodox. Moreover, the employer cannot take an adverse employment action against the employee simply because the employer objects to this particular belief, even though it may be objectionable. In this case, Peterson versus Wilmer Communications, Peterson was a member of a white supremacist church called the World Church of the Creator. And Mr. Peterson did not allow his religion to affect his work. He worked for Wilmer Communications. In fact, he was a supervisor there, and he supervised a team that had both white and black members, and had never had a problem in terms of work. Peterson, however, was featured in a local alternative weekly newspaper writing about the World Church of the Creator, and he appeared on the cover of the newspaper wearing a World Church of the Creator t-shirt. And the employer learned of this. I mean, the picture's all over town, and does not fire Peterson, but they remove him from his supervisory role, which means a cut in pay and fewer responsibilities, solely because of this picture. Again, it had nothing to do with his work performance. There had been no indication that he had ever acted on his white supremacist beliefs at church. So therefore, he filed a lawsuit. And again, the court sides with Mr. Peterson, saying that just because a belief, some people may find the belief objectionable, if it is religious in nature, they cannot take actions on that belief. Now, if Mr. Peterson had expressed his beliefs at work, or had allowed his white supremacist beliefs to affect his work in terms of how he dealt with the people under his supervisory care, well, then maybe it'd be different. But as it was, the court said this is simply a case of discrimination on the basis of religious belief. Even though it's a very odd belief, it's a very unorthodox, non-mainstream belief, nevertheless, we have to respect that belief. Now, having said that, though, personal preferences can be distinguished from religious beliefs. And in fact, you don't have to accept every request simply because it's alleged to be connected to religion. Because employees will sometimes request an accommodation for a personal preference that is not really religious in nature. This case, Brown versus Pena, always a case that sticks in my head. Mr. Brown was an employee for a company, and he had a very peculiar habit of eating cat food. And he would eat cat food during his break time at work. He would come into the kitchen, would pull out a plate, would open a can of cat food, soft, liquid cat food, put it on a plate, pop it in the microwave. You can imagine the odor of that and how it permeates the kitchen. So the employer says, Mr. Brown, you must stop eating cat food at work. You're welcome to eat cat food on your own time, but don't bring it to the office. Mr. Brown objects. He says, this is my religious belief. I worship cats, just as the ancient Egyptians worshipped cats. And therefore, when I eat cat food, I feel as if I am in communion with cats, and therefore it is part of my religious practice. The court, however, said this is not really about religion. This is not about a sincerely held belief. Instead, this is about the desire to eat cat food. It's a personal preference, and employers don't have to accept every personal preference just because it's disguised as religion. We cannot take non-religious views or political views and transmute them, change them into a claim of a sincerely held religious belief. Following Title VII enactment in the 1960s, there were a number of cases in which employees attempted to establish that the Ku Klux Klan was a religious organization. I mean, it burned crosses, after all. They had a cross on their chest. And therefore, their belief system required them to discriminate against blacks. The cases, again, multiple cases were filed, and in almost every instance, the court sided with the employer to say that Ku Klux Klan is not a religious organization, and you are taking a political belief in racial segregation and attempting to leverage it up into a religious belief.